Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you are new. Today we are going to be doing a wrap up. I know you are wonky. I know that I said in March my books and a beat would be back, but it's just been a stressful few weeks. So we're just gonna go with standard wrap ups for a while, and as soon as I have the energy to sit and do makeup while I talk to you, I will do that. It might not be an every month thing though. So we're in a period of struggles. In the month of February, I read 11 books, which for me is okay. It's not amazing, it's not shite, it's just not what I wanted to be reading. I expected, I think I had like 13 or 14 that I wanted to get to, but I just didn't have the time. But it is what it is. 11 is still decent. I'm more than on track for my 80, I think is my goal this year. But yeah, we're good for that. Which that totaled 4,146 pages. I listened to 64.5 hours of my reading on audio. Out of the 11 books, 1 was middle grade, 4 were YA, and 6 were adult, I think. So we're just going to start off with the 2 stars, and I really did try to like this book. I feel like normally when I also DNF'd this book. Normally when I DNF a book, I don't rate it, because generally I will DNF a book quite early on. But I tried to making my way through this book. I can't remember exactly how much I got into it, but it was a way into it. This was Prince of Sorrows by Helen Graves, and it started off quite well. There were a few grammar issues, but this was like an earlier copy of the book, so I expected there might be some grammatical errors, and sometimes in the first release of ebooks, especially with some, not all, some indie books, it hasn't always gone through a more strict editing process, so sometimes there are some of those mistakes, and I go in knowing that, so I haven't ever, unless it's abysmal and the writing style is awful, I've never marked people down for like a couple of editing mistakes or grammatical errors and things like that. This follows a human called Saffron, who has been raised by someone within like the Fae lands, and without an endorsement from somebody there and being deemed like youthful, he will be sent back to the human lands, and he doesn't want to go back there, which, you know, fair. The Fae don't treat him well. They don't treat any of the humans well. You know what Fae are portrayed like in books. Very arrogant, like despise humans, think they are beneath them, and they are treated as such. Initially, Saffron was an interesting character. There's a murder mystery element where there's this beast that's like seemingly attacking humans. I didn't get to the end, so I don't know who this beast is. Like, it's referred to as the wolf. It's a thing. But one of the people that are killed by this wolf is apparently one of Saffron's really close friends. That seems to be a nothing to him. When things are happening to his race, to humans, initially he seems worried, but the more he gets close to this Prince Sylvan, and everything encompasses like his and Sylvan's world. I totally understand that there is like a law to Fae, like the whole point of it is that they are beautiful and like terribly beautiful and that kind of thing, but the fact that everything is dropped for Sylvan, he becomes a total simp. We're supposed to believe that Sylvan is somebody to root for, that we want Saffron to be with, that underneath this meanness he's an actual good person, and that he's just like a misunderstood Fae, and he's just adhering to this way of treating people because that's what's expected of a high fae, and it's really not something I can get behind. It's not something I believe. Sylvan is not believable as a nice person at all, and the fact that people are going missing and being killed, and it's supposed to, that element was so interesting, like finding out who this thing, like what this thing was something that also drew me into the book. And the fact that it was like a male romance and it was fair, it like hit so many tick points for me when I was reading the synopsis. But then it became something that was very cringeworthy to read, and I just couldn't push myself through it. And I am all for DNFing books, and I was just like, unfortunately this was for the Indian Awards, and it was unfortunate that none of the books that I got were books that I enjoyed a whole ton. So that wasn't fun. I'm far too long talking about this now, but that was that one. Next 2-star, which should have been DNF, and if it wasn't for the podcast, it would have been a DNF very early on, and that was The Handover by David M. Barnett. I have had a discussion with Jem and Becca on the podcast about this. I will leave the podcast link down below. It was horrible. I don't mind reading books that have themes of like racism and bullying and prejudice if it's addressed in the right way, if it's dealt with as like this is someone being like this and this is wrong, or like if it serves a purpose to the plot. I don't like it, however, when misogyny and sexism and racism and like just really just stereotypical ignorant thoughts are portrayed as something that is clearly felt by the author, and it's put into a book, and he's clearly done no research on autistic rep. He's clearly done no research on anything, and just in his brain thought this would be a good thing to write about. Like, it's pitched as if really light-hearted, cute romance where Daisy and Nate are like, they have this brief contact between like the handover. They both work in a museum. Daisy works nights and Nate works days, and during this handover period a romance apparently blossoms. Do not believe like it's just not it. It's really not that at all. There's this mystery aspect of it, like, that was just really poorly done. Everything was poorly done. Becca mentioned this in her video. Like, Daisy should work days and Nate should work nights. Like, some things that he tried to do, like joking wise and just to bring a bit of fun into the book, was just not it. The only good character in this book that made me really laugh was the guy who ran the shop. I forgot, what's his name now? I forgot. We do talk about him in the podcast. And it was just this guy who owns like a shop that Nate frequents. And it was just a funny character. Like, the main character Daisy is coded as like having some kind of like being on the spectrum in some way, but all she cares about, the only way that she can describe a woman is by what they wear or like how they look. And it's like, even though it seemed like weight wasn't an issue for Daisy, she still referred to herself as frumpy for no reason. There was no purpose as part of the plot for her to think of herself as frumpy. She was called Crazy Daisy for reasons. It was just not well done, and I would highly recommend you do not pick up this book. We wanted to see if we could find if a male author could write a straight romance and do it well, and in this case it failed epically. I have been burned for straight romances written by a male. I don't think I'm ever going to pick another one up again, unless somebody I know has read one and can vouch for the person and vouch for the book, and I trust their opinion, because it's just a no. It's just a no. Let's move on to something a bit better, because everything from here on out is up. It's up. It's great. It's fab. And this is Paper Girls. This was 3.5 stars for me. And I know that sounds like a bit of a low rating, but I'm not really 100% sure on some of the characters in here as yet. I think this might be one that I have to read a couple of volumes of in order to get into it. This follows a group of paper girls who encounter something and it kind of throws off their day, and it's funny in places, but I didn't 100% get a feel for the characters like I have done in some graphic novels that I've picked up, and I haven't become immediately connected with the characters. And for me, as much as plot is important to a book, if you don't immediately give me something that helps me connect to one of the characters, then it kind of doesn't keep me in the book, if that makes sense. I am very intrigued about how this continues, and I'm being very animated with my hands right now, I don't know why. But I'm very intrigued to see how this continues, and I will be picking up the next volume. I don't know when, but I will be. I like it enough to continue, but it's not, at the moment, it's not like a new fave. So we have 4.5 stars, which is The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie. And this gets a 4.5 because it just didn't hit the 5-star feels for me. It was missing a little bit of something, but I just can't put my finger on it. I really enjoyed this book. I've already read this book with Meg and Chloe, and this is part of the Catch Up Book Club's new sort of series that they're going to be reading. It's the first Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie. This is dark. Joe Abercrombie is known for being like the king of grimdark, and I can totally understand why from this first book. This follows a few POVs, one of them being Glockter. He is described, the way you describe him, the way you think of him as like an old, frail, like, aging man but it mentions that he's like in his 30s, but something's happened to Glockter to make him the way he is, and this has torture scenes. I've mentioned before that I can read a book about battles and, you know, people being disemboweled by swords and stabbed through by javelins and, like, you know, whatever. I don't really mind reading, and I could sit there and, like, I could just eat and listen to people being sliced to pieces or chopped to death. I don't know. But with this, because some of the scenes are like torture scenes, and I think because the other participant in these scenes is kind of, I don't know why this felt different, but when these torture scenes were described, it literally, when you feel your jaw just like, it was so well described, but very disturbing. I want to read more. But I'm so glad I wasn't eating when I read some of these scenes. He explained one of the torture scenes took place, and what happened, and it was explained to someone that he was torturing, and it was a moment that I was just like, oof. This also follows someone called Logan, and we don't really get to know a huge amount about the characters in the first instance, which I love. Like, Joe Abercrombie has a way of building the world, but then also building the characters up in your mind as the book goes along, and we find out a little bit more about each of the POVs as we go along. The last character that we follow quite a bit is called Giselle, and I don't like him. He's a pretentious prick. He's entitled. I don't like his storyline. And it's not because it's a crap storyline. I do, but I just don't think he deserves any happiness. I don't like him as a human, and I think that's what you're supposed to feel like. And even though Glockter is the one that is supposed to be portrayed as, none of these are good characters. These are all, like, you could call them morally grey, although at this point you could just call Glockter a villain, but I don't know yet. Things happen in this book that I didn't expect. I gasped aloud at part of this book near the end. Did not see it coming. I am really excited to get to book 2. I don't know where this is going. All it kind of alludes to is like a war. There's gonna be war between places. I don't know who's on what side yet. I don't know who's good, who's bad. There might not be good and bad on this. It might all be just a whole massive moral grittiness, and you're not really supposed to root for any sides. I don't know yet. But there seems to be like a common enemy that a couple of them have, and I think that is supposed to be like the big bad. But again, I don't like trusting authors in what they initially give me as like the bad guys and things, because J. Kristoff is anything to go by. It might come and bite me in the arse, and it might just give me a massive twist that just makes me feel like I'm being sick and I don't know what I'm doing with my life, okay? So let's just move on to the next book. Another 4.5 stars, which was Miss Percy's Guide to the Caring and Feeding of British Dragons, and this was a Scribd 8 finalist book, and I can totally understand why it's a Scribd 8 finalist. I'll put the cover here. It is so good. It follows a girl called Mildred, and a woman, should I say. It's a woman, and she lives with her sister, who is a bitch. She feels like when her father died, Mildred moved in with her sister to help her with the kids, and obviously she had nowhere else to go because she stayed with her dad, and it's the whole thing. And there's this through story where Mildred's worried that she's like a spinster, and she's spent her life not speaking up for herself and just letting her sister speak to her. The way that her sister speaks to her, I swear to God, I don't know how people bite their tongues when people speak to them like that. It bugs the shit out of me, but I think it's supposed to, because you're supposed to really want the best for Mildred. Do you know what I mean? Mildred inherits something that she thinks is one thing, and it turns out to be a dragon. And this is not a spoiler, it's in the synopsis. And it's just a story of her figuring out what to do with this dragon. First of all, not believing it's a dragon, and then coming to care for it. And then it's the way that this is written is just I'll do a full review individually of this, but the way that this is written is kind of like tells you the story, but then throughout the story she's actually writing the guide to the caring and feeding of British dragons, and every now and again it will give an excerpt of the story that she's writing, or like the guide that she's writing, and it's just the way that it like weaves that into the story is just so well done. And the only little thing that I didn't particularly think was necessary for the book was the romance element of it. I mean, you all know, I mean, I've got behind you right now is like a full like bookcase shelves full of contemporary romance. I love fantasy romance, love contemporary romance, from like a 1 level spice to like a 5 spice level. I do not mind romance and smut in my books. However, I don't always need it in my books, and I would have loved this story regardless of the romantic element. I will say the romance doesn't overtake the plot. It's very much a side time. It's a side thing that is sort of like woven in its way into the plot, whereas you know there may be feelings, but it's kind of like a friendship first and it moves into something else. But I just feel like it wasn't 100% needed, because the story could have progressed without that being a thing. Saying that, I'm excited to get to book 2. Book 2 is already out, I think, and I don't know what it is about the books I'm reading recently, but there's so many books I'm just excited about. Like, the characters grip me. Like, it's very much a found family vibe. The woman that looks after the guy that is in this, he's like a teacher, and he's not like a teacher, he is a teacher, and this woman looks after him because he's very incapable of looking after himself. But the fact that she gets involved in their little shenanigans, and that she comes to really care for her, and there's a moment between those two, between Mildred and I've forgotten her name and it's really annoying me now, but there's a moment between them where it's very much like I care for you sort of thing. It was just such a sweet moment, that and those kinds of things that happen in the book happen at the right time. The pacing of the book, I read this so quick in fact that the vlog that I was doing it for, I forgot to update. I updated the vlog like partway through when I just started the book, and then totally forgot to update the vlog for the rest of the time because I just devoured the whole thing. these Scribd books that I've been reading, top tier. Top tier. Could totally appreciate why they are finalists. So we're now going to move on to my 5-star reads. And are we surprised that I have many a 5-star read? Next up we have a 5-star read, which is Lightblade by Zamil Akhtar. So good. So good. So this follows a young man called Jayosh, who is basically a slave to the system, and he's weak and he's a broken human, and he's got a past, as all protagonists do in these books, and he wants to be able to wield a light blade for reasons, and he has a mission that he wants to accomplish, but he's too weak to do it, and he doesn't have the money to pay for like these really experienced trainers to train him. So there are these things called dreamstones, which every hour in real life is like a day in this dream world. So he ends up getting a trainer to show him how to create these light blades. Things happen, things go wrong. He ends up slightly putting his life at risk a little bit, along with some other people that he meets on the way, and it might possibly have a found family vibe, which might also be something I really love in a book. The way that Zamil writes, it's like you're in there with him. So you've got the real world, and then you've got when he goes to sleep, he goes into this dream world, and it's just, the whole concept is just fascinating. That like what you learn in this dream world, or what you do in this dream world, you remember it in like real, like when you wake up. Like the skills that he would learn, he would remember. I haven't seen this kind of thing in a book before, but I love it. It's great. It's fine, funky, fresh, fabulous, and I highly recommend reading Zamil's work. And I am really shit at explaining, so I apologise if that was really badly explained. The next 5 stars we have is Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. This was a buddy read with some of my friends. Only a few of us finished it because content warnings in this. I know that a lot of people know what this book is about. A guy dies and he's in like the period between like death and crossing over, and there's like he's at a way station and he's reflecting back on his life and things, but the way he dies, I'm going to put a spoiler up here in case you don't want to know, but I do feel like people should know in case this is something that may affect them. But the way that he dies is like a heart attack. For various reasons, a couple of my friends have either like soft DNF'd it because it's just not the right time, or have DNF'd it because that is a trigger for them, or something that they can't read through. So again, if it's something that might affect you, then obviously just be careful when picking it up. It definitely is a book that you need to be in you need to be in a certain headspace for. Obviously it centres around a guy that's died, so death is discussed heavily in this. The way that he dies is only referenced a few times, so it's not something that's like that specific way is like heavily focused on, but death in general is around other people that have died. Some of the scenes are quite dark in like what happens, but the story, the found family, once again, is just amazing. TJ Klune has this way of really making you fall in love with characters. At the beginning of this book, I messaged the girls and I was like, I don't know how this main character is going to make me like him. If you've read House in the Cerulean Sea, you'll know that TJ Klune likes to, especially in what it seems like in these kind of contemporary settings, he likes to give you a character at the beginning that you're not going to particularly like. Whereas House in the Cerulean Sea, the character was just, he wanted to be alone. He wanted to just go to work, do his thing, not associate with anyone, and he wasn't actually a mean person. The guy at the beginning of this, Wallace, was not a nice person. And I messaged Meg and I said, I don't know how TJ Klune is going to make me like this guy near the end. Because I had a feeling that there was going to be like, you know, a moral to the story. It was going to have a, you know, it's a contemporary. So I kind of thought there was going to be some kind of epiphany that he was going to have. And I was like, I don't know how at any point I'm going to like this guy. Because he is horrible. We're not surprised that at times I cried. We're not. If you can get through this book, if it's not something that has any sort of like content, like triggers, like any triggers for you, I would highly recommend reading it, because it deals with a quite serious topic but also gives you some warm fuzzy feels, the same way House on the Cerulean Sea did for me. Although this touches on quite a serious topic, obviously death, there are parts of this book that really made me smile and actually made me laugh. Hugo is the guy who runs like the way station, and this is like a male-male romance, as TJ Klune likes to do. It was just done so well. I forgot that I had the physical book because I listened to it mostly on audio, but I definitely will be picking up the next in like the TJ Klune like contemporary type books. It's called In the Lives of Puppets, I think. I haven't read the synopsis for that, but I feel like he's solidifying himself as one of my top authors, not gonna lie. The next book of the month that I'm going to be discussing with you, Lord of Shadows. I will leave the By the End of a Long Life show linked down below where we discuss this book. Oh my god. I thought that the previous Cassie Clare books took me on a roller coaster ride. I don't know. My brain was a mess with this book. I love the Blackthorns as a whole, as a family, as a unit. They are some of the best characters. You want to protect all of them at all times, and Cassie has a really good way of, again, making you fall in love with the characters. The strong family connection that these have just melts your heart. Like, the love they have for each other is just so good. So The Lord of Shadows is the second book in the Dark Artifices, or Artifices, however you want to say it, trilogy. This is the Waterstone Special Edition, and it's so pretty. It's a chunky one. I didn't expect to cry at this, and I didn't actually cry until, was it near the end? Did I cry near the end? I think. I don't think I cried other than near the end. But next up, I read Polar Bear Explorers Club. I read this for Paulathon, and it was a reread for me, once again. Being back with Stella and Beanie and Shay and Ethan, yes, Ethan as well, was just, it was so good. And it was just what I needed to break up a lot of like the heavier stuff. I mean, stuff happens in the Polar Bear Explorers Club, if you've read it then you know, but it's a middle grade, so I knew that it would definitely end well. So because it's a middle grade, I knew that it was gonna be a quick read, it was gonna be a fun, fine, fresh and funky time, and it makes me want to reread the rest of the series. And there was still the pirate book by Alex Bell that I haven't read. So it follows a girl called Stella who was adopted by a guy called Felix, and she has always wanted to be an explorer, but girls can't be explorers until Stella wants to prove that girls can be explorers too. And she's just so sweet. Her and Beanie's relationship is just the sweetest. The way that he's treated is horrible by his uncle. The way that Stella treats him, and the way when Shay meets him, it's just so good. And initially, you're not gonna like Ethan, but just bear with, is all I'm saying, okay? Just bear with, and you'll love it too, I promise. The next one is God's Grave. Oh my god. This is one of those authors, God's Grave by J. Kristoff, part of the Nevernight series. This is what I was talking about when I mentioned earlier that authors like to make you think one thing and lead you into a false sense of security and then literally just sideswipe you. I can't tell you too much without giving too much away. I will leave the God's Grave live show links down below in case you want to know more and go into spoiler territory, because it's full of spoilers. So the first book follows a girl called Mia who, for reasons, ends up wanting to become an assassin to seek revenge. The first book follows her going to this assassin school, going through the very rigorous trying to become an assassin situation, which it's an ordeal. And we meet people along the way that we like, but also might not be the best humans. They're all assassins, so they're not the best of people anyway. Mia doesn't want to get close to people, but there's a few people that she does, and you do find that like there's a bit of a found family vibe. There's only a certain amount of people, candidates, that actually pass at the end and that can become an assassin, so you wouldn't think that they would make friends, but they do, and it's so good. I think this is the last book. I'm reading off a list here. I really should have brought my journal in, but I didn't. The last book is Catching Fire, second book in the Hunger Games trilogy, and holy fucking shitballs is all I can say. I sobbed at part of this book. I am well aware that I am behind the times with this book, these books and the series, because I've never watched the films, I've never read the books until recently, and that shocked a lot of my friends. So I told Tori that I was going to read them. I then decided to do some spoilery vlogs of me reading them. I may regret this at a later date, but I will leave them linked down below, my spoiler vlog playlist. I didn't expect to feel things the way that I did. This is a YA that was written a while ago, but it still holds up today, which you can't say for a lot of YA that was written back when Hunger Games was. I clearly don't know who has watched / read these and who hasn't, but if you want to know my full thoughts, including seeing me literally sob at part of this book, then I will leave the links down below. If for those of you who don't know, it follows a girl called Katniss who volunteers herself for the Hunger Games, which is basically like a fight to the death. Last one standing wins, and in book 1 it starts with that. A lot happens in book 2, and it again left on a cliffhanger. I will be watching the movies next, and I probably will also cry at them, so I need to prepare myself. That is it, I think. Thank you very much for joining. If you would like to see more of me, please like, comment, subscribe, do all that good stuff. If you want to let me know you're here but you don't have anything to say, please leave a black heart, very much appreciated. And until next time, enjoy. I hope you're having a lovely morning, afternoon or night, wherever you may be, and I will see you very soon.